Hello, everybody. I decided to say something else for the first time in the history of this podcast to start off. But you know what I am going to say, though, right?
How you doing? How you doing?
What kind of way is this to start off a show? Can you imagine Johnny Carson starting off a show like this?
Johnny
What
Carson
kind of bullshit is this?
ain't got shit on Ministrymodus.
Oh, you don't even start off the show. Start off the show right. Say hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are on another episode of Ministrymodus, and today we're going to talk about everything from a timeline of Sephardic Jews in the Netherlands all the way to the beginning of the Jewish presence in what is now known as modern-day America. And on the ride, I have my esteemed co-host, Cornbread, and this is Martin, and welcome again to the show. How about that, you know?
Well, that would be great, but I'm the one who records, so ultimately, I have the power.
Oh, boy, so you're the employer, and I'm the worker, and this is the capitalist system, huh?
No, that's not how that works.
Oh.
I just happen to own the means of production, is all. I just happen to own the means of production in this relationship. So
Yeah, well, I've been reading Das Kapital, so I'm gonna send a Kapital up your ass.
Das Kapital this, Das Kapital that. Why don't you Das Kapital a girlfriend?
Because I don't believe in exploitation of people, much less the exploitation of women.
Okay. That's fair.
Hey, no, seriously though, this is a little peek behind the curtain. Do you remember that song you made, Collectivize Your Body?
Oh yeah, I do remember. Wasn't it like some kind of really slow, stupid R&B song? It had like a touch of R&B to it. It was just me improvising as I went along.
Yep. I'm thinking like Rick James, I'm high, can't come down, you know, I'm high off your love, something like that. But some feminists would probably take issue with me for saying I listen to that song. But
I don't know a single feminist who would care. Honestly.
Right.
I think you're addressing a straw man of a feminist.
Oh, okay.
Now there are people who are like, there are those feminists who are like, hey, that song objectifies women or whatever, right? But, I mean, I know a lot more sex-positive feminists than sex is bad feminists or something like that.
Oh, okay. Hey, and by the way, speaking of feminism, if you believe that women and men are equal and should be treated equally, you're a feminist. That's that simple, folks.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Pretty much. I mean, that's like the most simplistic version of feminism. And I think, obviously, it's something we should aspire to.
Amen. Amen.
Same opportunities, and the same available outcomes within those opportunities and shit like that.
Although I do love what Prince said, I'm not a woman, I'm not a man, I'm something you'll never understand. I do like that.
Man, that sounds like Prince was talking about being non-binary to me.
It was 1984, and Prince could pass for a guy or a girl. He was quite handsome either way.
I agree, don't get me wrong. Dude, I'm not disagreeing with
Dude, you ever seen Prince, like, on the album cover? Oh, man, out there's an album cover where he's shirtless, he's holding his hand out, he's got this long flowing hair. I mean, holy mackerel, you would think this guy was a god or something. Or, I don't know, one of them one of those Hindu god or goddesses that are like ambiguous sexual, gender-wise.
Yeah, kind of like how Shiva
gorgeous
has avatars who are like, oh, do you mean they're just androgynous?
Yeah, androgynous, that's the word, gosh.
I was looking, while you were talking, I was looking at this article, because I was like, was Prince non-binary? And I found this very interesting article. There are no binaries. Understanding Prince's Legacy on Gender and Queer Theory. It's an article on Vox written by a gender and sexuality scholar, talking about how the media blew it on Prince.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like if he were today, yeah, I could definitely see that. And look at this image. This is from Prince's. This is the late '70s, if I'm not mistaken. Look at that picture, man. That's a beautiful man right there, man. And I can say that being completely 100% heterosexual. That is a pretty man.
That is a very pretty person. Not gonna lie.
Heck yeah. And hold on, what is that album cover though? So the people will know out there. I'm gonna look up Prince.
Yeah, you do that. When did this?
I'm gonna look up that album cover. What? Because I've been going through Rick James and Prince's old albums and just listening to them in their entirety. And man, my butt has been blown. And what I mean by my butt has been blown, I mean my butt has been moving because man, such great music. And I'm not just talking about the hits, the ones that came out. I'm talking about just all the songs on those albums, man. Oh yeah, so that one I sent you, and for the audience out there, it's Prince's. The album is called Prince. It's the second titled self-studio album by Prince. October 19th, 1979.
Interesting.
Heck yeah, man.
Damn, I wish I could be that fucking pretty. I wish I could be that pretty, but it's hard to do it when you're bald.
Oh, yeah. And man, I got this like... Dude, I don't know. Is this bad of me to say this? If it's bad, you can edit it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth before I say that.
Okay.
I just wish my hair were longer and flowing. That's all.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Now I'm looking. Oh my god, we are so distracted today. I was just looking at another thing too. That it's a list of people with non-binary gender identities, and it's like I think these are celebrities, or
modern day.
Some of them are politicians, some of them are celebrities, some of them are like scientists. Lots of very interesting names show up. There's Jim Sterling. Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's pretty cool too, man, to say that.
James Stephanie Sterling.
I think it's pretty cool to say, you know what, I'm not going to fit into your gender stereotypes.
Hell yeah. Some of these people I didn't even know were non-binary. Like, I knew about, Hikaru Utada. I knew they were non-binary. Most of these people are kind of listed as either genderqueer, non-binary, gender non-conforming. Thomas Beatty. Interesting. Damn. Bob the Drag Queen. Destiny. Wow. We'll have to go through this sometime. So...
Hey, PUF's on there. Yeah!
Notorious PUF.
Yes. If you haven't read that, if you haven't gone back and saw that, y'all, you gotta replay that. That's amazing.
Oh, we love...
We did an episode on that, so...
And we are going to be talking more about some American history, but specifically later in this episode, we're going to be talking about the earliest parts of the Jewish history in the United States.
Oh, why later? Let's just get to it.
Oh, do you want to go straight into this now?
Sure. I mean, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
Not anything else at the moment. Is there anything else you want to talk about, though?
Nah, man. Today, I'm looking forward to breaking down when we can start at the Jewish American experience.
We're going straight into it. We're not even going to deal with the other bullshit today. All right.
Well, we deal with a lot before,
We do, yeah, and we did.
At least we got to see Prince and his
We got to talk about Prince.
Glory.
We got to talk about Prince and his perfectly trimmed chest. So,
can you imagine? Never mind that. Oh.
All right. Well,
my life is wasted, Cornbread. I wasted my life.
Well, you know what? You could always wear a wig. So that said, everybody, we're getting straight into it. So today's episode is going to be part 1 of the history of the Jews in America. So before we get into this, we actually spent a lot of time prior to recording just trying to figure out where to start. It's when you kind of take the position or see America not just as like the United States or the 13 colonies, but rather, all of North, Central, and South America as kind of like a singular entity, like we do on this show, it tends to get a little confusing because we found figures going back as far as 1570, I believe, if not sooner.
Oh, brother, I started
Spain?
in the year 1492.
You can go back as far as 1492 and find some kind of Jewish presence.
When Jews were expelled from Spain.
Spain and Portugal from their respective inquisitions.
Yeah.
So we have decided to go with a timeline that we kind of feel like works best. And it's also one that, in one video that we watched, courtesy of Dr. Henry Abramson, of focusing around the arrival of Jewish refugees in New Amsterdam around 1654? 1654.
Yeah, 1654.
Sounds great.
1600s in America were lit as a mother, man.
Yeah, just think, in less than 100 years, Public Universal Friend was dabbing on the authorities, riding on horseback, escaping arrest.
Man, because when we talk about 1600s, man, we're talking about, we're talking about what? Jamestown, the Pilgrims and Puritans. We're talking about the first Africans coming over here as well, and coming over here like they had a choice. But anyway,
yeah, they
1619.
they just arrived.
Yeah, they just got on a boat one day. Hey, let's go to America. Yeah, that's what some people would want us teachers to teach. Some people down south, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, some people up north too, I'm sure. We're in the Midwest. Let's not jerk ourselves off here.
Yeah, you're right.
So, that said, want to get started?
Oh yeah, man, let's delve into it. And so clap, 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 clap to you, because man, you came today, you got all these sources. And me as a history teacher, I'm like, oh man, I'm a kid in a candy store. So let's get started. So point us to where we need to go.
All right, my man. So, want you to look at your section that you saved, the Jewish arrival in New Amsterdam. That's where we're going to start, baby.
Whoa.
Oh wait, actually, no, I'm technically wrong. I got my own shit. Oh, you put me on a pedestal and I fell right off. So, instead, I want you to pull up the article that I sent you, History of the Jews in Colonial America.
First, I was like, "What the hell is this dude talking about?" But now I know what you're talking about. All right.
So once you get that pulled up, you know which section we're going to start in?
Dutch Brazilian Sephardi group.
That's right, buddy. All right. So, the first group of Jews in the northern colonies arrived in early September 1654, shortly after Bar Simpson. Now, who is Bar Simpson, or what is Bar Simpson?
I don't know, but that's a dope name, Bar Simpson. All right, so let's hit the Control F and see where this brother Bar Simpson. Oh, Jacob Bar Simpson.
Oh, Jacob Bar Simpson?
Yeah, so this dude, Jacob Bar Simpson, hold on.
He's a very noteworthy individual, right?
Bar Simpson, yeah. It says here on July 8th, 1654, he left Holland and arrived aboard a ship called Pear Tree, on August the 22nd in the port of New Amsterdam, which is now in Lower Manhattan, where Wall Street is today.
Yep. So Jacob Bar Simpson was...
Oh, hold on, man. Oh, gosh.
What's up?
Sorry. Oh, gosh,
Okay.
never mind. I was just thinking in my head. Jews in Wall Street. Oh, God.
Oh.
God.
You done goofed. Not really.
Well, I'm just saying, like all the lies that are perpetrated against the Jewish people, right?
Yep.
Everybody seems to have them.
I know, but...
And that's why we gotta check our biases at that door and then kick them the hell out.
I agree.
Kick them straight in the butt.
But while we do that, let's learn about who the hell was Jacob Bar Simpson?
All right.
So Jacob Bar Simpson was one of the earliest Jewish settlers at New Amsterdam, modern-day New York City, and the earliest identified Jewish settler within the present limits of the state of New York. He was a Ashkenazi Jew of Central European background. And for those of you who don't know what the hell Ashkenazi Jews are, for some dang reason. So Ashkenazi Jews are part of the Jewish diaspora. And they're pretty much, your more European Jews, right? And
well, hold on. I push back a little bit. Wouldn't that be more Central Eastern European?
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So traditionally, the traditional language of Ashkenazi Jews is, or at least now was, Yiddish, and Yiddish might surprise you, is actually a Germanic language, and it has and it's got elements of Hebrew in it, along with Aramaic and some other languages that are Slavic. And Yiddish developed after they moved into Northern Europe, beginning in Germany and France, kind of around the Middle Ages. So you're in that West, Center, and Northern Europe, right?
Okay.
And they kind of used Hebrew only as like the sacred language, right? And it remained only a sacred language, for like liturgy and things like that, until the revival of Hebrew as a common language in 20th century Israel. So throughout the time in Europe, Ashkenazim, plural for Ashkenazi Jews, made a lot of really important contributions to philosophy, literature, scholarship, art, science, all that. So Ashkenazi refers to Jewish settlers who established communities along the Rhine, the river in Western Germany, and in northern France during the Middle Ages. And once they were there, they start to adapt traditions carried from Babylonia, and the Levant and the Western Mediterranean to this new area. So they also start to develop, very distinct practices and rites in like a lot of German and French cities. So that's kind of like the very short version of who Ashkenazi Jews are.
Well, that would make sense that they were more well educated, right?
Yeah.
Because, at the time period you're talking about, Babylon, or that area of the world was one of the more intellectually rich areas of the world, the Middle East at that time.
Well, that's very, very far flung from the past, from the fucking Middle Ages, sure.
I'm saying if they carried those traditions.
Yeah, some of them have like origins that go as far back. It's kind of complicated, but that's kind of the short version of who Ashkenazis are, right?
Yeah.
And this is basically Jacob Bar Simpson's background.
Okay.
So Central European Jewish origin. So Bar Simpson was sent out by some Jewish leaders in Amsterdam and what was then called the Dutch Republic to determine the possibilities of extensive Jewish immigration to New Amsterdam, what later becomes New York City. So after the Dutch-Brazil War, or the Dutch-Portuguese War, excuse me, particularly with the fall of what was called Dutch Brazil, and it was like Dutch Brazil, it was also called New Holland, and it was ruled by the Dutch in the Americas between 1630 and 1654. And
so I didn't know that the Dutch owned that.
Yeah, it's the northeastern part, so it wasn't literally the entire sphere.
Oh, modern day Brazil. It wasn't the entire of modern day Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah, or even Brazil back then. So I'll send you a quick link to that.
No, I see it. Yeah.
Man. So, in fact, the Dutch Republic from 1630 actually controlled almost half of Brazil, or at least the settled European area of Brazil at that time. And it was also the headquarters of the Dutch West India Company.
Yeah, but don't Brazilians speak Portuguese today?
Yeah. There are actually some folks, there's a minority of people there who do speak Dutch. In fact, there is one country in South America that still speaks Dutch. It's Suriname.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the Dutch eventually cede this portion of Brazil to the Portuguese with the Treaty of the Hague in 1654.
The hog?
The Hague or the Hague? I never know how to pronounce that word. The Hague. Excuse me. The Hague.
Yeah, I don't even know, because I grew up on a street called the Hague, called Hague Avenue.
Hague? Okay. It's
Hague,
probably Hague.
I don't know. It could be some stuffy European thing, though. You know what I'm saying? It's pronounced Hague, sir.
Hague. So, but yeah, this is a period of time when Jews plan to leave Europe to find, homes and sanctuaries elsewhere. Particularly because of a particularly nasty organization called the Portuguese Inquisition, who greatly viewed what were called conversos or marranos with a lot of suspicion and persecution. So for all those of you who don't know, converso or marrano in this context means someone of Jewish background who is a convert to Christianity, specifically Catholicism. So,
and it still wasn't enough, man.
Yeah.
That's something you and I were talking about. How even if the Jewish people converted to Catholicism, the Catholics still saw you as second class.
Yeah, as not Christian.
Yeah.
So Bar Simpson is essentially being sent out by these folks in Amsterdam to kind of find new opportunities in New Amsterdam. So he, along with others, arrive at the port of New Amsterdam on the ship called the Pear Tree on August 22nd, 1654, having left the Netherlands on July 8th. So Bar Simpson uses a passport issued to him by the Dutch West India Company. I don't know why that's so hard to say in my head. Dutch West India Company. So
usually we're used to British. But hold on, no, that's so cool though. Can you imagine being on a boat for months and months at a time and then arriving at a new land?
I don't know. I think that would fucking suck, actually.
And let me just keep it contextual to this. And you're free to explore that land, and that would be pretty cool to me because I'm an explorer, dude. I love exploring. This would be my dream job if I'm able to have the freedom to explore. And I say freedom to explore because not everybody who came to this part of the world had freedom once they got off those boats or on the boats. So,
freedom for me, but not for thee.
Yeah, but that would be so cool, exploring, man.
Exploring is
so
fun.
Cool. Knowing my luck, I'd probably get eaten by a bear or something, you know what I'm saying?
Just
He'd break my back with one swipe of his big old claw. Boom! Oh, I'm dead.
You had fun adventuring.
Where you live.
You turn into bear poop.
They don't even wait till you're dead. Bears will eat you alive. Them things are savages, man.
Yeah, they are truly godless killing machines. So,
so cuddly. I want to hug them.
Okay. Well, anyway, Bar Simpson, after he arrives, is succeeded by a party of 23 other Jews. You know, the folks that we were talking about prior to this.
Oh, yeah, the Sephardic group.
Yep, the Dutch-Brazilian Sephardic group.
Oh, do you want to go into what Sephardic means as well?
Yeah, I can do that in a minute. So these folks arrive in September from Brazil. They establish the congregation Shearith Israel, and it's the first Jewish synagogue in what would become the United States later on, of course.
Oh, man, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
And this place, I wonder if this place is still alive today.
Yeah, it's still around.
Oh,
it's
man.
active. Yeah, it's
that's so cool, man.
Yeah, it's Orthodox. Yeah, it's right here. Poof.
Oh, I see it. Oh yeah, I seen it.
It's been around. It's seen some. It's got some history to it, dude.
Wow.
But yeah, this is kind of where we're starting to see the first congregation
so cool,
of Jewish settlers and what later becomes the United States. So as you mentioned earlier, who are Sephardi or Sephardim? So
yeah,
Sephardic Jews, Sephardim. Sometimes the term Hispanic Jews is kind of thrown around, but we'll stick with Sephardic and Sephardim. So they're kind of like another ethnic division of Jews. And their communities originate not necessarily originate, but they're traditionally established in the Iberian Peninsula, so modern Spain and Portugal. So Sephardim comes from the Hebrew word meaning Spain, Sepharad. And it also can sometimes refer to Mizrahi Jews, which is that's another different community of Jews. But for the most part, it kind of refers to more of like Jews originating from communities around the Iberian Peninsula. Wow. So
such like a rich history, man. Just Jews everywhere in the world.
Yep. So although the millennia long established latter groups did not originally have ancestry from Jewish communities from the Iberian Peninsula, the majority of them became influenced by Sephardic style of liturgy and law and customs, and from the influence of a guy named Moshe ben Maimon, who you might know better as Maimonides, who was one of the most well-known of the medieval Sephardic Jewish philosophers.
At first, I thought you said my mom and these.
I could be mispronouncing it. Maimonides. Maimonides. Thank you. Oh my god.
Okay, all right, I thought you said my mom and these. I'm like, what? These nuts? I don't know.
Fuck you. I'm operating on like maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep, bro.
Come on, why are you getting that? Come on, man. You didn't go to bed earlier, bro.
I got shitty sleep last night. Leave me alone.
Oh, okay.
You're not my mom. Maimonides. So this is a community that's produced, also a lot of important philosophers and thinkers as well, along with Ashkenazi and Mizrahi communities. So many of these Sephardi Jews, are forcibly expelled from Iberia in the late 15th century. And they kind of carried with them this really distinctive diasporic identity with them to places, including to North Africa. So parts of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya have fairly significant populations of Sephardic Jews. And many of them also come to America as well. So they're a very widely spread population.
Nice.
And their community kind of experienced decline during the Reconquista for reasons that you might be obvious. So their community, the Sephardic community, begins to decline in Iberia because of what was called the Alhambra Decree in 1492. So what was the Alhambra Decree? It was basically issued by, let's see here. Oh, Lord. It's basically the Edict of Expulsion by Isabel and Ferdinand of Spain.
Oh, same people who sent Christopher Columbus all the way across the Atlantic.
The exact same motherfuckers, yes.
Gosh.
But that's essentially who, the Sephardic Jews are. So we have a pretty eclectic group already, because you have Jacob Bar Simpson, who's coming from this Ashkenazi background, and you have this party of 23 Jews who are mostly Sephardic.
Oh yeah, and those party of 23 Jews, they were coming from Brazil.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they went from...
Because the Portuguese Inquisition was operating there, too.
Oh, okay.
So they're like, fuck it, we're not staying here.
Oh, yeah.
It no longer becomes safe.
So they're refugees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they are refugees.
Yeah.
So they show up after Bar Simpson, early September 1654. So Bar Simpson meets them at this area, what's called the Battery. It's like a public park in the southern tip of Manhattan. And it's kind of facing New York Harbor. So this group was made up of 23 Portuguese Jews from the Netherlands. And like Bar Simpson, they fled from a former Dutch settlement. And they emigrated from what was Dutch Brazil. It was also called New Holland, but we've already covered that. It was ceded to the Portuguese after the Dutch-Portuguese War. So in fear of the Inquisition, they left the city of, I don't know how to pronounce this city's name. Is it Reykjavik? I think it's Reykjavik. If it's Dutch, I think it's called Reykjavik. I have no idea. I can't speak Dutch.
Reykjavik.
Yeah. So
I think
it could be. Who knows? So this group originally docks somewhere in Spanish Jamaica and Spanish Cuba, but given that the Spanish are no more friendly than the Portuguese are to Jews, they don't stay there. So they take their ship called the Saint Catherine, and they go to New Amsterdam, and they settle there, and they're not exactly welcomed with open arms because, local merchants and members of the Dutch Reformed Church kind of give them
church, yeah.
They don't want them there. Yeah. So the colonial governor at the time, a guy named Peter, oh Lord,
I think that's Stuyvesant, because when they say Brooklyn.
Okay, Stuyvesant, I can see that. So
I think that's Stuyvesant.
Yeah, he's like so Peter Stuyvesant, he's the Dutch colonial governor of New Amsterdam. Technically, it's part of a larger area. Like the whole colony is called New Netherlands or New Netherland until it's ceded to the English later on.
But just that place we know as Lower Manhattan, I think, is New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
So he gets complaints from the local merchants in the church, and he attempts to expel the Jews there. So he writes a letter to the directors of the Dutch West India Company, and we're going to read some of the letter here. The Jews who arrived would nearly all like to remain here, but learning that they, with their, customary usury and deceitful trading with Christians, were very repugnant to the inferior magistrates, as also to the people having the most affection for you, the deaconry, also fearing that owing to their present indignance, they might become a charge in the coming winter that we have. For the benefit of this weak and newly developing place and the land in general, deemed it useful to require them in a friendly way to depart, praying almost most seriously in this connection for ourselves as also to the general community of your worships. Oh my God, I'm not reading the rest of that. Fuck that. Plus, it's a run-on sentence, but mostly he's just being a racist fucking asshole. So
no, that's a good point. No, and he continues that the deceitful race, such hateful enemies and blasphemers in the name of Christ, be not allowed to further infect and trouble this new colony.
Wait, what's the fucking point? What's the good point that you just mentioned here? This is just
that's what I'm saying. This piques my interest here because he's calling them a different race. That piques my interest here because this is all the way back in 1654.
Okay, so race had like a different. I wonder,
like, what translation is that? Like, what translation is that word race?
So race has a different context at this time that you or I might be kind of more familiar with. Okay. So race in this general idea literally just kind of refers to like a group of something, like a group of people.
It's translated from the Dutch, and I wonder what word they use for that.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, he is kind of using it to refer to a specific ethnic group, but even though like race itself at this time may or may not have like a negative context, in this very specific case, he is literally calling them a deceitful race.
Yeah. And hey, brother, we're doing history. This is a primary source, man.
Yeah. Part of history, sometimes you gotta read ugly fucking documents. You gotta read some ugly primary sources. Just to give you, so there is some value in going through this. So this reflects, like, the attitude of not just the governor, but also probably of the local Dutch population there as well.
Yeah. So, and of course, the usual Jews are practicing usury, which is what? The practice of giving unfair loans, I guess.
Yeah, it's essentially, technically charging loans with interest could be considered usury in general. Okay. And in the more legal sense, though, like today, it might mean more specifically that the interest rate is charged in excess of the maximum legal rate. Like a loan shark.
Oh, yeah.
But in this time, charging or like providing loans with interest was, in general, was kind of largely considered usury.
And I find it interesting, too, that he's accusing them of deceitful trading. And this is like modern day Wall Street we're talking about. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of find that sadly funny. Sadly humorous.
Yeah. So he sends this letter to, the directors of the Dutch West India Company. And among the directors of the company included several influential Jews who actually intercede on the refugees' behalf. So company officials basically tell this guy to fuck off, and they ordered him in a letter dated April 26, 1655, to let the Jews remain in New Amsterdam, provided the poor among them shall not become a burden to the company or the community, but be supported by their own nation.
Yeah, give them free health care.
Well, mind you, this is all. This is a company. This is a capitalist enterprise. At the end of the day, and here's actually another segment from that letter. More primary sources, baby. We would have liked to effectuate and fulfill your wishes, and request that the new territories should no more be allowed to be infected by people of the Jewish nation, for we foresee therefrom the same difficulties which you fear. But after having further weighed and considered the matter, we observe this would be somewhat unreasonable and unfair, especially because of the considerable loss sustained by this nation, with others, in the taking of Brazil, also as because of the large amount of capital which they still have invested in the shares of this company.
Oh, holy shit.
Damn, there's money involved too.
Dude, so they're basically saying let these Jewish people stay because they have shares in the Dutch West Indies Company or India Company.
So this decision is not primarily motivated out of altruism, folks.
Oh my god.
Therefore, after many deliberations, we have finally decided and resolved to annotate upon a certain petition presented by said Portuguese Jews that these people may travel and trade to and in New Netherland, New York, and live and remain there, provided the poor among them shall not become a burden to the company or to the community, but be supported by their own nation. You will now govern yourself accordingly. So that's the response from the company to the governor of New Amsterdam.
Yeah. Dude, I'm still, my mouth is just still agape because, wow. So they're just allowed to stay because they got shares in the company.
Some of them do.
God. Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, like I said, it's not entirely altruism that's motivating this decision.
I mean, forget what's fair. Like, oh, well, these are human beings like you and I. Let them stay. No, it's okay. They got many of them have a lot of shares in our company. They got to stay. Oh,
yeah. And these people, if that were not the case, they could have easily have just told them to fuck off too. Like they could be deported, sent them out, wherever.
Oh, Marx strikes again.
So some time passes between then and 1664. So about 11 years later, the English eventually capture the colony, and New Amsterdam essentially becomes an English possession.
New York.
And
changes names.
Yep. And at that time, anyway, the rights of the Jews weren't being tampered with or infringed on. And for about 20 years, life kind of stays the same before the English start to rule the area. Although, their population starts to grow. So, originally, Jews had been previously barred from settling in English colonies, as they had been banned from all English territory for like 400 years.
What?
So, this is where a guy named Oliver Cromwell comes into play here. So, Oliver Cromwell held the title of British Protector, or Lord Protector, from 1649 to 1660. And his son Richard, or at least Oliver Cromwell, he actually is the one who lifts this prohibition. And after Oliver Cromwell lifts this prohibition of Jews settling in English colonies, they found the first major Jewish settlement in Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh. So Oliver Cromwell, too, if you know the English Civil War, at least the cursory information of it, Oliver Cromwell got rid of the king of England. And what's up with the monarchies of Europe hating on Jews, man?
It's there's a lot of different things that go into it. I mean, anti-Semitism, yeah, but there's also other interests involved as well. So yeah, Oliver Cromwell at this time was essentially Lord Protector of the Commonwealth. So this is kind of a time when England does not actually have a king. He kind of has the power. He's like head of state, and the government is kind of like, England has kind of like this short-lived Republican Commonwealth under Cromwell's rule. And it's called the Protectorate. So it's this kind of area in English history when this is all happening. So this decision kind of allows, the Jewish population to grow and enjoy some prosperity. And they eventually found the settlement of Newport in Rhode Island, which is pretty neat. So in 1672, Rabba Couty, I don't know who Rabba Couty is. Interesting. Who is Rabba Couty?
Rabba Couty.
Let me Google this because I haven't seen this name before. Doesn't have a link or anything. That's odd. Okay. So in 1672, Rabba Couty attained prominence. He's a person of some sort. I'm not sure. It doesn't say. So this guy named Rabba Couty, that name sounds like a rapper name almost, man.
Rabba Couty coming at you with an Audi, boom, bam, bam, slam your mama, say damn.
So in 1672, this dude, he obtains prominence by appealing to the King's Council in England from a decree passed against him by the courts in Jamaica. So he's a resident of Jamaica, I think?
Yeah. Who is this dude? Rabba Couty, man.
As a result of which one of his ships had been seized and declared forfeited. His appeal was successful, and apparently this sets a precedent because it helps establish the rights of Jews as British subjects. And this is also apparently the first case in which a colonial grant of naturalization was recognized as valid.
All right. So they became British, citizens?
Subjects. So subject and citizen are different statuses historically. Okay. So, yeah, most, going back in time, most people were subjects of the Roman Empire. But not everyone was a citizen of the Roman Empire, right?
Ooh. But what's that mean, subject? So are you subject to the same laws, though, as a citizen? What's up?
Yeah, you're subject to the same laws, typically. Citizen implies you have rights and responsibilities.
Oh.
So, going back to the time of Jesus, right? Was it Peter who was a Roman citizen?
It was Paul. Paul made that was like a big reveal in the Bible. He's like, yeah, I'm a Roman citizen, punk. I'm like, whoa, you could have dropped that on us before.
Yeah, implying that everyone else around him were subjects and not citizens. So, in this instance, they're not given citizenship, but they get rights anyway, some rights, as British subjects.
Oof. Right. Was kind of looking up a little bit for them, you know what I'm saying? Move it.
It's better than what they were doing previously,
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. All right.
So.
Yeah.
So that was around 1672. Thank you, Rabba Couty. I feel like Rabba Couty could become another character in our lore.
Rabba Couty. Boom, bang. Hell yeah. I tried to look him up on Google, man. I can't find a thing about him. I looked through like 10 pages of it.
Yeah, he's just kind of there and he shows up.
For those, and if you're like, well, how do you spell the name? It's Rabba, and then the last name Couty.
This dude gets his ship, swagger jacked by a court in Jamaica, and so he appeals to the King's Council in England, and they're like, give him his shit back, bro. He gets
Yeah,
his
he
big-
must be Jewish too if it applied to Jews as British subjects. So, hell yeah, man. Rabba Couty. Hell yeah. Join our list.
So now we're in 1685. New Amsterdam is New York now, baby. So there's one figure, another character that shows up. A guy who originally was named Saul Pardo. Saul Pardo. In this story, he's called Saul Brown, though. So Saul Brown apparently fills out an application to trade at retail, right?
That's crazy.
Working as a, like a trader. And this application gets denied. And apparently, as was also that of the Jews for liberty to exercise their religion publicly. So they're starting to, or they either start to, or they are currently experiencing, they can't really do public displays, of being Jewish, right? You can't really do
I wonder what
Jewish
that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, apparently you can do it in your home, but not in public, right? You can't really perform any rites or rituals out.
Huh.
So, like I
But
said,
that's weird to me, man. Because what's that mean? Like exercising the religion? They're gonna get together on the street corner and start praying or something?
I mean, who fucking knows? But
You know what? And I'm kind of ignorant too of like Jewish liturgy. Like I don't know what. Yeah, that's.
so
I'll be honest.
this is neither of us obviously are Jewish here in this podcast, but to my knowledge, depending on like the congregation and the sect of Judaism that you're talking about, it could be something like reading from the Torah in Hebrew or something like that.
Yeah.
Not an expert on that. So, and like, we make it no secret that in certain things like this, we don't pretend to be experts on any of these subjects.
Oh nah, man.
we learn with you, dear listener,
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely.
and that's part of the fun. So apparently, there's some stifling of the Jewish population in New York at this time. So they have to basically practice, their religion privately. So they did so privately in some definite place of worship would appear from the fact that a map from New York dated 1695 shows the location of a Jewish synagogue on Beaver Street. Also, that Saul Brown was the minister of the synagogue, and that this congregation comprises of 20 different families. So Saul Brown is also not just a trader, but I mean, he's got to make a living somehow. And he's also, I don't know if he's technically a rabbi or not, but
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, he ministers his congregation.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it isn't something, like Christians in this time can still do anything they want, publicly, right? In terms of, religious expression, right? And celebration. But Jews can't.
And that's so weird to me, man, too, because in my head, I got modern conception of evangelical Christians. I'm just imagining it at this time period. Christians running around the streets of old ass New York with their hands in the air like, oh, Jesus, oh, I love my Jesus. Oh, God is an awesome God. Just running around everywhere like they're fucking crazy or something. But,
Like whipping themselves into a frenzy and shit, self-flagellating.
no, I'm talking about like they're on their knees. They got their hands in they got their head and their hands in the air, and they got their eyes closed, and they're singing like these rock song Christian hymns. Yeah,
Hallelujah. So
you're the Rock City one. You remember that one that you used to?
do like that, gets you like bouncing up your feet.
Yeah.
Your love is all I need. Your love. Like that shit.
Jews are like, man, where the hell did y'all come from? You supposedly came from my religion?
So,
Yeah.
apparently, 5 years later, the site of the synagogue became so well known that in a conveyance of property, the premises were referred to as a landmark. So eventually, the synagogue on Beaver Street eventually becomes like a landmark, which is pretty cool. So in 1710, the minister of the congregation, so apparently this passes hands to a guy named Abraham de Lucina.
Oh,
So Abraham de Lucina is granted exemption from civil and military service by reason of him being the minister. And the reference is apparently made to the enjoyment of the same privileges by his predecessors. So these guys, at the very least, they're being exempted from, military or civil service that would otherwise be expected of them. But I don't think it's the entire congregation. I think it's literally just the actual ministers and, the family from which, these ministers come from. So apparently there are some recorded meetings, the minutes. So this congregation eventually becomes Congregation, Shearith Israel. So this begins, the minutes of the Congregation Shearith Israel of New York begin in 1729, when it was located in Mill Street, and refers to records dating back as far as 1706. So this congregation's established on, apparently this is like a different congregation at this point. So this congregation, Congregation Shearith Israel, located on Mill Street, has records that go all the way back to 1706. Come 1730, the same area, like the lot on Mill Street that this congregation is at, the lot was purchased 2 years. Okay. This is a weirdly constructed sentence. God. Who wrote this? Who the fuck wrote in these sentences? They're like, so confusing. Okay. The congregation, established on Mill Street in 1730, on a lot purchased 2 years before, became the first synagogue in the future United States. Okay.
Oh, no. The verb is established. This congregation established the first synagogue.
Yeah. So technically... That's interesting. So, but what about the other one then, on Beaver Street?
It's a good point, yeah.
Because that one was dated 1695.
Yeah.
Or maybe it wasn't publicly recognized as a synagogue, even though it functioned as that.
And it was designated as a landmark 5 years. Yeah, that's weird, man. Oof.
Interesting. Wow. So, that's a confusing paragraph. So apparently we can say that the official synagogue, Congregation Shearith Israel, begins in 1729. I think that's a good place or a good time. Let me see. I'm looking at...
I've got that Rock City in my head. Do, 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 do,
do, do, do. So like the congregation there that formed Congregation Shearith Israel assembled in early 1654.
But maybe they didn't have like a place. Maybe they didn't have a physical space yet for the worship.
That could be it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Because again, this is
cool.
They're not able to practice, the religion publicly. So would technically buying property and building an out in the open synagogue technically count as that at this time? That's so interesting.
Isn't that amazing though that we talked about defecating, right? Earlier.
A little bit.
Isn't that amazing that some people treat other people's religions as defecating, where it's like do it in private? That's weird.
I guess.
Like no, check this out, man. Like sometimes I'm walking by at my work and I see in the hallway Muslims doing one of their 5 prayers for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that's kind of like public, I'm like, what's wrong with people like expressing that in public if that's like their worship?
Yeah.
They're not trying to like convert you. They're not trying to like hurt you.
They're minding their own fucking business.
Hell yeah, man. Man. I don't know. When I walk by, some of my co-workers doing that, I feel good because I'm like, man, I'm getting to be around people expressing their religion, even though I may not be that religion. So I feel good. I feel great. I feel like my knowledge, my culture is being elevated. I love it, man.
You're being enriched by diversity.
Oh yes. Yeah, perfect. Enriched by diversity. There you go. Enriched by diversity. And that's something that these more theocratic governments and these more oppressive and more authoritarian governments don't allow their citizens to be enriched. Man, I feel the same way too when like you go into a bar and you start kicking with some older dude who starts like kicking some knowledge to you. Like, hey man, this is the way it was, man. Check out my story. I'm like, man, thank you for sharing, man. Thank you. Enriched by the diversity. Beautiful, beautiful words. Oh, we need to put that on the shirt. Enriched by diversity. Don't censor me.
Mwah, mwah.
Thank you.
So we have a pretty good idea of, what life is like for Jews in New York at this time. So I'm going to keep reading on a little bit here. It would thus appear that the religious rights of these early Jewish settlers had been secured in the beginning of the 18th century, so 1700s, and that they enjoyed many political rights. So an act passed by the General Assembly of New York on November 15th, 1727, provided that when the oath of abjuration was to be taken by any British subject professing the Jewish religion, the words, quote, upon the true faith of a Christian, were allowed to be omitted. Really interesting. 3 days later, an act was passed naturalizing one Daniel Nunez de Costa. David Nunez da Costa. Interesting. So, I guess he might be a Sephardic Jew?
Yeah, it sounds like about that name.
Yeah. A bitter political controversy of 1737 resulted in the decision by the General Assembly that... Oh, this is when it starts to kind of suck a bit. Resulted in the decision by the General Assembly that Jews should not be allowed to vote for members of that body, the General Assembly. So there's discrimination. It ain't all, farts and sunshine here.
Well, I would argue farts are a bad thing.
Well, yeah. But if you're me and you have, the sense of humor of a child, farts are funny.
Yeah.
So we see, there's still repression going on here. They're winning some rights here and there. Other times, not so much. Their political expression is being limited. And this is just in New York, by the way. We haven't gotten to, like New England or Maryland or Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, in 1740, Parliament, the British Parliament, passes this act called the Plantation Act. And in this act, it specifically permits Jews to be naturalized as British subjects in the colonies. Prior to this, the New York Colonial Assembly passed numerous special acts of naturalization, some of which were applicable to individuals only, others more general in character, under which Jews could be naturalized without taking the oath, upon the true faith of a Christian bit. Were also put upon the statute book.
Ooh, some religious tolerance.
Somewhat. I mean, they're still not allowed to vote in the General Assembly, which sucks.
Yeah.
So
no representation. Come on, that's ridiculous. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah. So between this time, like the 1740, and the Revolutionary War, which occurs later, the Jewish community in the colony is slowly increasing. Kind of slowly but surely. And many of the Jews immigrating to New York at this time are coming from Spain, Portugal, and the West Indies, the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And that kind of, that's just kind of like an overview of what's happening in New York. So what's going on in other parts of the 13 colonies? Well, let's take a look at New England.
Okay.
So a group of Jews settled in Newport, Rhode Island in the late 1600s because of the official religious tolerance that the colony awarded, established by a guy named Roger Williams, who you and I actually talked about in our previous episodes.
Say, the way you said a guy named, I'm like, motherfucker, you know who he is.
I know who he is. I just didn't know if you remembered. I didn't know if you remembered who he was.
I remember Mr. Williams.
This motherfucker.
Yeah.
So
he's a good guy.
I know. I didn't mean motherfucker in a mean way.
Okay.
The value neutral motherfucker. So
Well, when you say the ER at the end of that word, it's kind of a negative thing. So you say, yeah, he a cool ass motherfucker, man. You know what I'm saying?
Am I dropping the hard R at the end of motherfucker? He
he good motherfucker, man. He good. That's what you say, yo.
Okay, so, some Jews are settling in Newport, Rhode Island, and part of, the appeal is the fact that Roger Williams, this motherfucker named Roger Williams, he's governing with, some religious tolerance, which is pretty neat. In other parts of the New England colony, there were probably occasional settlers in the 17th and 18th centuries, Jewish settlers. But the intolerance of the Puritans, of course the fucking Puritans, rendered it almost impossible to establish any significant, strong Jewish religious communities.
Yeah, the Puritans, the canceling people all from the 17th century on.
Literal cancel culture, folks. Hate to see it. Literally stifling free speech.
Yes. One
figure comes up, according to several sources, this guy named Moses Simonson. He settles... Is it Simpsons? No, it's Simonson.
That's the most Jewish name I ever heard. Moses Simonson?
No, wait. Simonson. Okay.
Moses Simonson. That's like the most Jewish name I've ever heard.
Really? You think that?
Moses Simonson.
Okay. Well... Okay, so this motherfucker, Moses Simonson.
What are you doing with the hard R?
I'm just gonna start calling everyone a motherfucker. I don't care. I don't care if they're good or bad throughout this. I'm just gonna keep calling them motherfuckers now because I know it's provoking reactions out of you. So
I want to cancel you
for
using the hard R.
So according to several sources, Moses Simonson settles in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1621. And this guy might have had Dutch Jewish ancestry. So, and another guy comes, and this is kind of like some noteworthy figures who show up in New England during this time. So Moses Simonson is one of them. And he's one of the earliest settlers of New England. And he arrived on the 1621 Fortune voyage and would have been present. He would have been one of the people present at the time of the Pilgrims' first Thanksgiving in 1621. And then so another very interesting guy who shows up, this motherfucker named Judah Monis. So Judah Monis was North America's first college instructor of the Hebrew language. And he teaches at Harvard College from 1722 to 1760, and he authors the first Hebrew textbook published in North America.
What a great name.
Yeah, so
Judah Monis.
So Judah Monis, who also later converts to Christianity, he fills the chair of Hebrew, at Harvard College at this time until his death in 1764.
Hold on, dude. We should name our podcast Judah Monis.
Judah Monis? Ministrymodus Judah Monis?
No, just Judah Monis, yo.
He sounds like a guy we made up.
I love this name. I love these names, man. Moses Simonson, Judah Monis. These are American Jews' names. I love it, man. I love it. Wow. I love these fucking names.
So, yeah, the first Jewish family to settle in New Haven. New Haven, is that oh, it's a coastal city. Okay. I think I've heard of New Haven. I'm not from the East Coast. I don't fucking know these places. So the first Jewish family to settle in New Haven arrives in 1772, though a few individuals who had become converts to Christianity lived there a few years before they showed up. So the first congregation was established in New England about 1840, and the congregants were members of about 20 Bavarian German families. So from that date on, this community kind of grows in slow stages too. So Jewish settlements also start to, form in Bridgeport, Ansonia, Derby, Waterbury, New London, and Hartford. And the first congregation in Hartford, established in 1843... Oh, no, wait. Read that wrong. The first congregation in Hartford was established in 1843. And since 1891, a number of Jewish farmers were settled in various parts of the state. So we're starting to see, budding Jewish communities in New England, which is pretty cool.
Well, yeah, and another thing too, just based on my knowledge of 19th century immigration patterns to the United States of America, a lot of these would be German Jews. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah,
because during that time period, in the mid 1800s, a lot of immigration to the United States was from Germans.
Yeah, many of them being, of course, Ashkenazis.
Yeah.
So the earliest mention of any Jewish individuals in Massachusetts kind of starts to appear around May 3rd, 1649. And there's references to Jews among the inhabitants of Boston in 1695 and 1702. But they're kind of regarded more as like stragglers because no settlers make their home in Massachusetts until the Revolutionary War. So the Revolutionary War apparently drove,
What?
Yeah, so kind of like a consequence of the fighting from the Revolutionary War. So there were Jews that were living in Newport at the time. And those Jews had to flee Newport from the violence and make their way to apparently Massachusetts, I think.
Well, I'm wondering, what side of the American Revolutionary War is kicking the Jews out?
That's a good question.
I'm like, man, let's all the Jewish, everybody. I don't care what you are. Let's kick the British asshole, or the Brits. Let's kick the American, or not Americans, but colonists or something.
Yeah, this doesn't really specify that.
Man,
this is kind of like a brief overview. It's not like a singular narrative. It's more like very specific records of specific communities, like here scattered throughout the colonies.
Yeah, but I want to know the primary sources of these, because it's the first mention of a Jew bears the date of May 3rd. What was the primary source? Was it somebody's diary? Yeah, I've seen this Jewish dude walking down the street.
Well, let's figure this out here. So in 1777, Arab Lopez and Jacob Rivera, with 59 others, come from Newport to Leicester and establish themselves there. But this settlement doesn't survive the end of the war. A number of Jews, including the Hayes family, settled in Boston before 1800. Of these, a significant guy comes up, a guy named Moses Michael Hayes. So this motherfucker, Moses Michael Hayes, was an American banker, merchant, and philanthropist.
Well, do you know, speaking of wrestling, sorry, there was a wrestler named Michael Hayes.
Okay.
He was a member of the Freebirds in the 80s and late 70s. I just find that hilarious. Sorry. Moses Michael Hayes was a Jewish dude.
Yep.
Interesting.
And in 1830, there's a record of a number of Algerian Jews going to Boston, but they end up disappearing from history for some reason. They just kind of just fall off the map? I don't know. They just say, but they soon disappeared.
Yeah. I love the way this is written. This is hilarious.
God, I hate this writing is so confusing, honestly. So the history of the present community actually begins later on in 1840, when the first congregation was officially established. Interesting. So the Jewish immigrants to Vermont and New Hampshire have never been very numerous, though there are congregations in Burlington, Vermont, and in Manchester, Nashua, Concord, Portsmouth, Dover, those places. So not a whole lot of importance can be said about the communal life of the Jews in New England, and their numbers increased, but slowly until after the beginning of the Great Russian Immigration in 1882, when the overflow from New York City, or New York, as well as the emigration through Canada, commenced to stream into New England. So there's not a whole lot going on, in these places until around 1882, right? So the opening up of the West and the resulting unprofitable nature of farming in New England drew away from this part of the U.S. A ton of potential farmers who eventually, they abandon, working in the fields to find more attractive opportunities in the Western states. Of interest and connection with this shifting of the population is the fact that many of these abandoned farms, especially in Connecticut, were taken up by Russian Jews who worked, made their living as dairy farmers. So they kind of like fill in that gap that many of these other farmers left behind when they moved out west.
What? How does that even work? Like the Russian Jews just went on their farms after they left? We'll take over now.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they probably bought them, I guess. I mean, they're not just giving money for free. They're not giving the land.
I don't know, though. Like, when I think of Russian Jews, I think of pogroms. If you don't know what a pogrom is, it is violence. It's these sporadic violence against Jewish people that happen especially in Russia during this time period. So I'm like, if they come to America, like... So, I'm sorry. I guess I have that bias in my head of Russian Jews being poor and persecuted. So there you go. So I'm imagining these old Russian women with these wrinkled faces, and like a shawl around their head, just coming onto these farms, taking them over like squatters. So again, my bias, man, my bias.
Probably not how that happens.
That's what I'm saying. My bias. So I'm sharing with you all out there. Bias, man. We got to check a bias at the door, and that's what I'm doing.
I mean, at least you didn't say that they stole them or anything like that. Or I did
say they were squatters, which probably wasn't true, but
yeah, I don't consider squatting that big of a deal. So
no, I don't either.
That said, I think it's a good time to wrap up. Okay. And I think next week what we'll do, we're going to continue to talk about, the history of Jews in other parts of the colonies, specifically Maryland, Pennsylvania, and the South.
Yeah, and then I'm looking forward to the South, too.
And what I'm particularly interested in, and what you mentioned earlier, is, what's life like for Jews during the American Revolution.
Okay.
That's probably going to be where things get particularly spicy.
Oh, yeah. It is interesting, too, because I know a little bit about African Americans during the American Revolution. But, yeah, I never heard of the Jewish perspective of the American Revolution. But, yeah, so...
Well, we're going to be learning more, baby. So...
And I love these names, dude. Judah Monis.
Judah Monis.
Judah Monis. That's a dope name, man. Oh, my God. It flows off the tongue. Like a diarrhea flows, I love it.
What?
I don't know.
Diarrhea? That's disgusting. Why couldn't you say flows like like a natural spring?
It flows like a natural spring.
But here you were like, hey yo, my name Martin. I think this flows like diarrhea. I'm trying to be complimentary here.
I'm trying. I love that name. It flows like a spring on a bright summer day.
Well, folks, we're wrapping it up here today. Boy, did we learn a lot.
Yeah, phew.
So, Martin, what are your closing thoughts? Besides you comparing these people's nice names to the flow of diarrhea.
No, I wasn't comparing names. I'm saying their names flow off your tongue. You know how when you have diarrhea, it's easy to do it? That's what I'm saying. It's easy to say these names.
But why are you comparing it to diarrhea again?
Because it's the first thing that came to my head.
Why diarrhea?
These names flow like piss. I don't know, man. These names flow like a spring on a summer day when it's warm outside and no clouds are gray. I love them so much. I just may change my name. That's my thought. But anyway, so yeah, but seriously though, my thoughts are, I didn't know any of this, and what made it so interesting to me is the writing of this as well.
That writing was kind of the pain to get through. I'm not gonna lie.
It was mysterious, but I was also piqued by that primary source by Peter Simonson and the Dutch West India Company. very interesting to me in terms of American history and the American history of profits over people. Now, sometimes that can be used for good purposes, like keeping Jewish people in. Oh my God. Man, weird, man. Weird.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish we had like more opportunity to actually read through more primary sources.
I'm trying to find some more, actually.
I think I understand why, the writing of this article was so kind of like weird as it was.
Yeah.
And it could be because of a overall lack of primary sources to go off of. So I think there's a lot more holes in the narrative, I think. Because, I mean, the article does mention a lot of different sources, right? For all these specific communities. But those sources probably don't provide a whole lot of information other than, perhaps like records from specific congregations about families.
Yeah.
Like one community has like 20 families, another one has 59 families going to this congregation. So I'm kind of curious why there's not like a more comprehensive singular source that's being referenced when writing about these communities.
Oh yeah, and I don't see many citations too for some of that as well.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's scholarship available.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of curious about, like, is there something, like, very specifically difficult when writing about this, like, time period in early American history?
Yeah.
Or is there something else that we're missing here?
I'm going to use some of my historical thinking skills to look for some more primary sources.
That would be great.
I do that for a living. I'm a history teacher. So
that would be fucking fabulous. So, that said, we're wrapping up part 1 of the history of the Jews in America. So, thanks again for joining us, everybody. You should also take some time out of your day, if you don't mind, if it's not too much work or effort, to follow us on Twitter at Ministrymodus, or to check us out on YouTube, on our Ministrymodus YouTube channel. Or if you'd like to reach out to us via email, you can contact us at martinandcornbread@gmail.com. All one word, martinandcornbread@gmail.com. Though I will say, the best chance to get a hold of us is on Twitter. So send us a DM, follow us on Twitter. You can send us a death threat. We're not going to report you. We'll be flattered to actually have your attention. Or show us some love. We like love too. We like any engagement. Give us engagement. So that said, Martin, you have any rhymes to flow off to end this episode?
Oh yeah. Do I got a rhyme for you? First of all, I'm going to go to my emails. Not email as E-M-A-I-L, but E-M-A-L-E.
Oh.
February 2020. True manhood in the midst of confusion. The culture wars are not an illusion. Many churches and men's ministries, brothers, we are robed in Christ. That's what he said to me. Satan's #1 strategy, to bait and hook you. Look at you. There's a daily marshmallow to endue you. U.S. Senator defends men against tax. There's a men crisis because Josh Harley said it's like that. I don't know. So I'm just going through the one of the days we're going to get through these emails.
Oh, yeah. We'll have an episode about that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, shoot, folks. We really appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you for providing that rhyme, Mr. Martin. We hope y'all join us next week. Y'all come back now, you hear?
And thank you so much for putting up with me today. I promise I did not take any laughing gas or any drug before we started.
So
I just feel jovial and gay today.
Jovial and gay.
Yeah, maybe it was looking at that Prince cover to start off this podcast with.
All right, folks. Catch you later.